We're going to start. Hi, everyone. I'm here with Bruce Lipsig and Zach Church of Dentrix Ascend. I have been talking about cloud computing for many months now. Everybody's heard my opinion of why we should switch to cloud. I wanted to bring the people who actually are involved in the software that I use personally. And I'm going to turn the microphone to Zach to introduce yourself, Zach, and then Bruce, maybe if you can introduce yourselves.
You bet. Thanks, Dr. Bob. I'm Zach Church. I am one of the product managers for Dentrix Ascend. I've been with Henry Schein for almost 23 years now, and I've worked on Ascend for a good portion of that, and I'm very passionate about cloud practice management, and very passionate about having it implemented in our customers' offices. I think cloud is the way to go, and I agree with you, Dr. Bob, on that. So, Bruce?
Thank you, Zach, and good afternoon, Dr. Bob. My name is Bruce Lipsig, and I'm Vice President of Real Cloud Imaging. We are the exclusive imaging provider for Henry Schein One, and we create the Dentrix Ascend imaging product and the Dentrix Imaging Center, which works with the Dentrix on-prem G7 product as well. So we handle most of the imaging needs for Henry Schein One, and I'm excited to be here today and talk about our Dentrix Ascend product and our Dentrix Ascend imaging. Thank you very much for having us, Bob.
Thanks, Bruce. Zach, I wanted to kind of give an introduction of what Dentrix Ascend is. I know there is some confusion between Dentrix Ascend and Dentrix. Is it exactly the same? I know you have some slides ready here. Could you go over kind of giving us an introduction about how this software works and what it looks like? And so we can maybe shed light on some of the features that Dentrix Ascend has.
Sure, you bet. So Ascend is cloud-based. What that means is if you have Chrome, you've got everything in the practice management system. You can access it from anywhere. It doesn't matter if you're on a Windows PC or Mac or a tablet. If you have something that can run Chrome, you can run Ascend. You also have the convenience of accessing it from anywhere, whether you're in an airport, or if you're in a cafe, or you're in a home office. You can access it from anywhere. That's a limitation that exists with other practice management systems, where you have to install software on computers and you install it in your office, but you really can't access it outside unless you have something like VPN. Whereas Ascend, you can access it literally from anywhere, without the need to have installed products. You don't need to install updates either. The updates are automatically, when there's a new feature, you automatically get it. And your practice data is automatically backed up in the cloud. You don't need to have a server computer in your office, or have your own massive hard drive that you take regular backups, or your own cloud-based backup system. Your data is already backed up for you. There are other benefits of Ascend, such as like electronic services, electronic claims, free e-statements, online booking, patient forms, and other features that normally you would have to pay for with other practice management systems. That is kind of a high overview of Ascend. There are very powerful clinical tools, front
Zach,
office tools.
I'm sorry, Zach, I wanted to interrupt you here, because this is a really important thing you kind of mentioned, is the cost. And people look at the cost of a subscription like, oh, I don't want another subscription. But if you add up all the features Ascend gives you, it usually is a lot cheaper than you buying all those services separately. That's the point you were trying to make, right?
Yeah, exactly. Good clarification there. Those additional features are included, but because I know that there are some practice management systems that say, oh, you charge this many cents per claim, and that piles up, and
that's free e-claims, free attachments, free texting It all comes with the patient, patient communication forms, everything is included. Great. Go ahead.
Correct. All right. I was just going into some of the big, powerful features that are in Ascend. As you mentioned, patient communication. The main components that you would expect in a practice management system. There are powerful claim management tools in Ascend, a powerful reporting engine that allows you to even create your own reports and export data if you need it. And as I mentioned, you can access Ascend from anywhere, and there's a centralized database. And that centralized database, it provides a unified patient record. And those who may have multi-site locations, you're able to access the patient record from multiple sites. If you have a general practice, then you have an ortho specialty, or if the patient needs to visit one of your other locations because of availability of the schedule, all of that is available because of that central database. So everything's in the cloud, as I mentioned before.
Zach,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Zach. Ascend also has benefit verification included as well, correct?
Correct. Yeah, the eligibility for patients in advance of an appointment. I know that it's vital to make sure, does that patient have actual eligibility? Do they have benefits remaining? And finding out details about their benefits. Yeah, that is included, just like electronic claims.
And that automatically gets fed into the software, correct? We don't have to go on another website. It's already there, and
Yep.
And it's included in the subscription.
Yep, it all comes down into Ascend. You can see the patients that are flagged as having eligibility, that is, that they are eligible or they're not eligible. You also get a pretty detailed document from the payer that says, here's a breakdown of everything that's been used on this patient's insurance, even some of the limitations on frequency or waiting period, stuff like that. It comes down from the payer. So you have all that information at your disposal.
Excellent.
All right. So we're going to get into, so that's kind of what Ascend is. We'll get into talking about imaging. And I know that Bruce is probably not one to toot his own horn, so I'll do that for him a little bit. We have a real depth of imaging features in our software. And our imaging team has actually been developing digital imaging like before the 90s, if I'm remembering correctly. And that's before digital imaging was really a thing. And so that's a depth of experience. I mean, multiple people, and they're not the team that spends time developing schedule features or reporting features. They are dedicated to imaging. And as you'll see, there are a lot of very advanced imaging tools and imaging technology that Bruce will talk about that you really just won't get elsewhere.
Yeah,
So,
I want to interrupt you here because there are a lot of companies can come and say, "Oh, our imaging is great." You guys work for the company. I don't, but I do work closely with Bruce's team, and I don't know if I can call him Bruce's boss, and I know how extensive and comprehensive this imaging team is. As a matter of fact, I always call it Dentrix Ascend's main superstar is the imaging. And I have to tell you, I always recommend to people, when you're choosing a software, look at imaging before you look at the reports. See how images are handled. I can't do dentistry without imaging. I don't care how many reports I create. If my x-ray doesn't look good, if it doesn't have embedded imaging, this is really important. Embedded means it's within the software. Nothing else opens up, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah,
and we'll tell you all about why.
Yep. Yeah, there's no bridged solution that you have to get out to a separate application with separate look and feel, separate access rights, and we'll kind of go into that in a little bit. But yeah, all those are are true, and I guess we can transition over to Bruce, who's going to talk a bit about some of these different items. We'll kind of go back and forth on some of these. Talk about embedded imaging. We talked about that a little bit. It's completely embedded within Ascend. The open architecture, not limiting us to proprietary devices, and then some of the automation that you get with Ascend. We'll talk about that.
Great.
Sounds pretty good, guys. Bob, I want to thank you for the passion that you show. I mean, I feel like you and I are living a bit of the same life because we've been testing this and working side by side with this. But I think you know how I feel about this, but I feel we really have something special here. We have something different. And I think that's because when you look at running your practice, practice management without imaging doesn't manage your practice completely. Imaging needs to be embedded in the practice management because images are needed in different places throughout the workflow of the practice. And you need to be able to quickly grab those images, attach those images, view those images, send those images to somebody else. So if you can't have imaging embedded into your practice management, you're at the mercy of two different programs trying to run together. And that's always a challenge. It's funny how this works because when we look at ourselves versus some of our competitors, we have to first start by separating on-prem solutions with the cloud-based solutions. There are a lot of hardware manufacturers that make imaging software for their on-prem solutions, but they don't have cloud capabilities. So when we came forward to make imaging applications, we knew we needed to have open architecture to be able to plug in all kinds of different devices. But we also had the expertise from the imaging side to be able to know how to use these devices and how to talk to them so that we could create this open architecture solution. What we find in cloud-based competitors is that sometimes the practice management group recreates imaging and tries to create some form of imaging to go with the practice management, but it doesn't have the imaging expertise that you need to really do imaging. It comes from the practice management team. There's another competitor out there that actually does it well with the imaging. Their imaging is very open architecture, and it even has 3D capabilities, just like ours, which we're about to show, whereas some of the other embedded imaging applications don't even have 3D or advanced capabilities. The one that does have advanced capabilities, though, was created 15 or 20 years ago as a separate product and is now bridged to another practice management where they don't get that bidirectional communication that comes naturally from being embedded. So we really think we have something special because we took imaging knowledge and made it from ground up to be a part of that practice management. Our imaging doesn't run standalone. It only runs as part of Dentrix Ascend or Dentrix G7. Those are the only places you can use our imaging. And that's very important because that allows us to write the imaging directly to work with the practice management. That's where you enter the data in the practice management. So we have to then speak to the practice management properly bidirectionally to be able to take information from the PM and move it back to the PM with results. So that's how important it is to have this to be embedded in the practice management. Zach, if you can move to the next slide.
Bruce, I'm going to translate that a little bit.
Please.
If you don't mind, for people who are not excited as I am with the technology. So what I want my members to imagine is that when you have a patient sitting in a chair and you're looking at, let's say on this slide that we're looking at tooth number 3 on the chart system, when you click tooth number 3, you can see the images and all of them, the x-rays, intraoral pictures within the same window. That's really important because a lot of software, when you click, something else has to open up and bridge through it. That's what Bruce was trying to explain. Embedded means that it's all included in the same window. There's nothing else to be added.
Perfectly put. That's a great way to clarify that, Dr. Bob, and I appreciate that. As you look on the screen, you can see a long list of the features and the benefits of being embedded. And these things don't happen if you're just bridged from a PM to an imaging application. Some of the things that I'd point out on the short list would be the fact that if you look halfway down, you'll see that it uses the same user interface as the PMS. As Dr. Bob was saying, when you're using Dentrix Ascend imaging, you never left Dentrix Ascend. The look is the same, the feel is the same, the buttons look the same, and the workflow is the same. So nothing has changed. You keep the same user interface. There are no bridges. These applications just work seamlessly together because they're embedded in each other. Now, when I look at the top point real quickly, remember, to be a full function imaging application and to really handle the needs of the office, you have to handle all the different modalities, whether it be 2D, whether it be intraoral cameras, whether it be extraoral cameras, color cameras, whether it be pans and sets, whether it be CAD CAM scans, or now even cone beam scans. All of those different modalities need to be handled in the imaging application and then fed directly to the practice management. If not, you'll find yourself cobbling 2, 3, or 4 applications together to get your 3D here, your CAD CAM here, your 2D here, and your PMS over there. It becomes so challenging for the staff and for the team that the benefits are lost as far as trying to computerize all this. And then people say, yes, we integrate. What they mean is they all run on one computer. It doesn't mean that the programs are properly talking to each other and passing data back and forth. Zach, would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That separation of products and separation of having to learn 2 different systems, there's a training barrier there.
Yeah.
And also, as someone who uses this every day, the convenience is priceless. I don't have to worry about different programs. All I do is I fire up Google Chrome, and basically everything is there for me. And also this feature that you have up here, it's really good. It's one of my favorite, this image peek that you have, that you can click on a tooth and you can literally see all the images and x-rays of tooth number 3 going backwards within the same window.
Those are the benefits of speaking back and forth with the PMS, being in the PMS and having it with one touch be able to launch components of the imaging that are needed at that time in that place. You don't have to go searching for the images. They're all associated back to the patient record, which is seen in the chart and then accessed from there. Zach, if you move forward one more slide, I wanted to bring you in on this because you understand this very much from the practice management side. Remember, Zach and I both have our expertise. He's been doing practice management since long before I was doing anything with practice management, and we've been doing imaging for a while. So when we come together and create something together, Zach says things like, well, we can't log into the PMS and then have to log in again to the imaging. We have to figure out things that automate this for the user. How do we do single sign-on and things like that? Zach, do you want to touch on that just a bit?
Yeah, you bet. And you kind of mentioned this before, but not having to have that separate username and password like you log into the application, because you have to have security. We have HIPAA, we have patient privacy, and so having to log into your practice management system, and then as you bridge to the other system, having to log into that as well is, it's inconvenient. You have to remember multiple passwords, and so separate password reset mechanisms, separate support teams. That if you ever have to configure a new, you shouldn't really have to configure a whole lot of devices, but if there's anything that has to, you have to contact support for, same support team in for Ascend as it is for Ascend Imaging. It's not really any difference. All the support technicians know the entire practice management system, including imaging. Whereas the other services, that's not the case. And you mentioned before that other bullet item I won't really touch on because it's, no bridges, whereas a lot of other systems have that bridge that it makes it, you jump in between systems.
One number to call. One number to call is very, very important.
And also,
exactly.
You guys do have a and if something is that the support cannot figure out, your team jumps in, Bruce, right? To make sure, like some doc bought a new sensor and now they don't know how to configure it, and that support may not know. And I know that the Real Cloud team gets in and fix it right away for them.
Yeah, there's no pointing, there's no finger pointing back and forth. We're all on the same team. If anything escalates beyond something that the normal support team doesn't quite understand, we're immediately called in on second line support. We have the expertise from the imaging side. We like to call it, from the manufacturer side, one number to call. I've heard the doctors refer to it as one throat to choke. But either way, it's a convenience for the clinician and for the customer. They don't have to start scrapping through their notes to find who you call for the imaging when there's a problem there, or call the PMS team and have them blame the imaging, etc. We're all together in this. We're creating a solution for the customer to run the practice, so that they can take all of those issues that come with running the practice out of their way and just be able to perform dentistry.
And these are live people who answer the phone. This is not like you have to create a ticket, send it in, and wait for them to call. You call the number, they answer the phone. It's very convenient. I just used them yesterday. I needed a special report and I didn't know how to create it. And that's what I wanted to tell Zach about, that the support actually takes the time to create your custom report for you, which is one of the greatest features of Dentrix Ascend.
Yeah, as we go more granular too, Zach is continuing on with this next lot of unified permissions. I mean, that's part of single sign-on, but even more advanced, to be able to control permissions all from one space. Zach, you probably, you at practice management, know the strength and importance there.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't have to go into a separate system to say, okay, now this user who's a separate user, because you have to configure your users and access rights differently. They have access rights to do this. No, it's all within Ascend. You configure imaging settings within the same system as you would configure settings to do with transactions or other access rights. All those access rights for our imaging are embedded within the practice management system.
Exactly. And if you could advance the slide one more, Zach, one of my favorites, there's always a learning curve associated with going from one application to the next, and where am I now, and which button, and where's the button that I usually push, etc. We spend a lot of time talking to customers, and they always say the hardest part is taking the staff through the learning curve of getting up and running on a new application. Well, the imaging and the practice management aren't different applications. They're identical, with the same development teams putting them together. And what you end up with is something that looks and feels like you never left, because you did never leave. The buttons are in the same place, whether you're in 2D, 3D, CAD CAM. They draw, they measure, they zoom, they rotate, they annotate, all from the same areas in every modality. You're not searching different applications to then find different buttons to use to be able to work the application. All the same look and feel in the UI really benefits the team members as they continue to go through the daily routines.
Yeah, exactly. Well put.
Yeah, Zach, if you move forward on that next one, Zach. There's a long list. If you hit it a couple times, you'll see that there's a long list of advantages that come from embedded imaging. Some of them are really technical. The fact that when we know a customer is coming in, we can have the images available and ready in the background. That helps a lot with 3D images when cone beam images are large. If you know that a patient is coming in, you can be prepared and have those images. So the communication back and forth is just, there's a myriad of advantages to having the two applications speaking bidirectionally. And as a funny comment there, we actually patented that technology a few years back, the ability for imaging to talk bidirectionally to practice management, sending certain valuable information. So you're going to see that we're really the only ones that take advantage of the embedded technology to automate the practice, which is what we're going to talk about shortly, about automating the practice. But before we go there, Zach, could you advance to the next slide?
You bet.
I wanted to touch on something that's very important to the practice. For years and years, the customers have been somewhat at the mercy of the hardware manufacturers. If I'm buying a quote unquote pan from somebody, it comes with their pan software, and that's the software I use for it. And then I'm buying some 2D intraoral sensors, and they come with some software, and it's all free, it's all included together. And now I've got software for my 2D intraoral sensors, and it only runs those sensors, and the pan software only runs that pan. And then I decide I want to add different sensors because I want to change sizes, or I found something that's much more reasonably priced on the internet or whatever it might be. And I find out the software I'm using doesn't allow me to plug in anything but the hardware that they sell with it. And that left the doctor with changing hardware and software solutions often, learning curves that were more than challenging, and unfortunately sometimes getting stuck with the products that he's got because he can't make a change and he can't do anything for the better of the practice to move away from the product that he's stuck on. So what we found is that open architecture is really important, not only to DSOs who seem to be acquiring practices and bringing them forward and not wanting to throw away the hardware that's already in there, but to general practitioners that don't want to be locked into one particular brand. Somebody might make the best pan, but they might not make the best intraoral sensors. Somebody might make the best CAD CAM, but not make the best cone beams. You want to be able to mix and match this technology. And that's why open architecture is so important. And when I talk about open architecture, I don't mean just supporting other devices. I mean making them work properly for the practice. Because what you have is sometimes they handicap one or the other hardware device so that if I'm running the hardware that came with the software, it runs perfectly. But if I add additional hardware, it's now not running the same. It has to go through additional steps, etc. We don't have a horse in this race, Dr. Bob. We are open architecture, and we try as hard as we can to make all the technology and devices work to the best of their abilities for the doctor.
Bruce, I want to, this is the point you're bringing up. It's really important, but I also believe that the way you explain it, it needs a little translation from techie side to, Zach was in my practice, and before we got on, he was kind of chuckling at my setups in my office, is that I have so many different sensors and intraoral cameras and different devices because I test them and I want to see how they work. And I literally have 5 different sensors in 5 different rooms, and they're all speaking with Ascend and no other software. As a matter of fact, 3 of them come with their own software, and the people who sold them to me were surprised that I said, no, I don't want that software. Don't worry, I got it covered. Meaning that these sensors, these intraoral cameras, are directly integrated with Ascend. The word I like to use is plug and play, that everybody used to it. Also, we're not at the mercy of the manufacturer that throws you a bone such as a Twain driver, because some of those could be good, but a lot of them are not good, and they reduce the quality so that you can go back to their software. And that's my opinion, again, not necessarily an opinion of Dentrix Ascend. I believe in the fact that this open architecture that Bruce is talking about is basically plug and play. Think of it as that. No matter what device you're going to buy, 99% of the times, Bruce and his team have it covered to directly integrate. Am I correct, Bruce?
That's the real world answer, Dr. Bob. You're wet-fingered, standing in the trenches, and you're seeing exactly what the benefits are. Techie guys talk tech back and forth. Yes, I make those products work. Yes, we support that hardware. But when it's the doctor in the trenches and he's realizing that, hey, I just found a great new intraoral sensor. It's on the internet and it's available and it runs in this way. I'm going to give it a try. No, you're not. Your software won't let it run. How would that feel? I mean, the ability to go ahead and try all these different devices and bring them all into your one application so that you can compare them side by side, use them side by side as you need. And Dr. Bob, you're telling the real world story of the technical story that I just told, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much. That is one of the most important things moving forward. The hardware has grown up now. Imaging has grown up now. You don't need to be forced into using the hardware and the imaging that come together. You can branch out and create an ecosystem and then plug in devices into that ecosystem, not have to change the ecosystem because you bought a different device, right, Bob?
Yes, but I also want to stress here, Bruce is talking about, oh, we don't have to do this. Yes, you have to do this unless you're with Dentrix Ascend. I think it's so unique to Dentrix Ascend that I think it stands out with among other softwares that you're still working and trying to connect different things here and there. I bought this sensor, and there was a document that our friend Jim sent me, and I just boom followed this and directly integrated to the Ascend. As a matter of fact, I got permission and I sent that document to the company that, hey, use this for your Dentrix Ascend. customers. It's a lot better than the solution you're offering. So it's not really well publicized that Ascend is the only one who's doing this.
You know, there is so much more to Ascend. A cloud-based product pushing out updates automatically. Once you log in, everything is there. New devices are supported. Things that are happening while you're not even knowing that they're happening. That's why I started our conversation, Dr. Bob, with I really feel we have something special here. I really do. Because of the fact that the cloud gives us such convenience, because of the fact that the imaging was designed, created, and embedded in the practice management for the practice management, because the practice management takes advantage of the embedding and automates the workflow, which we're about to go through shortly. But real quickly, Zach, if you want to advance one more slide. Yeah, we wanted to point out that it's all about the fact that now that the hardware has matured so much, there's no need for third-party software to interpolate that hardware or interpret that hardware. We take that hardware, plug it directly in, and now use it directly in Dentrix Ascend. One more slide, Zach, if you could. As you can see from the screen, I mean, it's unlimited. The whole idea is open architecture. Well, as we said, we don't have a horse in that race. Our horse in the race is making our customer, our Dentrix Ascend customer, happy by making as much of the hardware that they want to use in their practice available and working to the best of its ability. You can see here, I mean, there's a long list of different 2D sensors. If you forward to the next one, Zach, there's a long list of PANs and CEPs and all the different intraoral, extraoral, 2D, 3D, you name it. The idea was to go ahead and integrate everything we could. And as new devices come, we integrate them as quickly as we can daily. We're integrating new devices every month. Dr. Bob?
Bruce, I explain this to my members in the group whenever somebody asks, but I want to stress on that word integrate. This is not, they're not talking about a Twain driver. Okay, this is direct integration, which means the quality of your images are what it's supposed to look like when the manufacturer created it. So when other companies talk about integration, yeah, everybody integrates, but not direct integration without using a Twain software. Now, Twain software is fine for certain things, such as an intraoral camera, things like that. But my experience has been that for X-rays, direct integration is usually best.
Well, we're a little bit at the mercy of the hardware sometimes. We integrate as deeply as we can to as many hardware devices as we can. Some hardware devices offer us deeper capabilities than others, so we're a little bit at the mercy sometimes of them. But it is true that making them work properly in the workflow of the practice is the key, and that's what we always strive to work backwards from. And now, Zach, if you could move forward one more slide. This is one of the key points that I'd really like to take some time on, Bob, if you don't mind, because what is the benefit of embedded imaging? And the benefit is automation, automating the workflow of practice. Remember, in the past, we talked about integrating. We integrated practice management and imaging. Well, now we've embedded the imaging. So instead of integrating, we automate the workflow of the practice. And Zach, if you could move forward one more. We looked it up pretty closely and we did some research before we launched our strategy of talking about automation. And what we found was the definition of automation was replacing something that was done manually with an automated process. And we're going to show you how we've replaced things that were done manually before with an automated process. But then we found that there was more than just the time savings that you found. It was also better guaranteed results. When we took the human element out and automated things to happen in the background with the computer, all the mistakes went away. No offense to any of the staff, but we're only human and we all make mistakes. So sometimes we miss posting x-rays to the ledger and billing properly. Well, we don't let that happen because with Dentrix Ascend, you launch your x-rays from the practice management via a CDT code. And as soon as you've taken that x-ray, we can immediately enter that in the ledger and bill the patient properly for that procedure. We don't have to wait for that to be done manually on checkout. So what did we do there, Bob? We replaced something that was done manually with an automated process. And we brought that to the customers. And you know what they said? They said, that's really valuable, Bruce. I think it saves me 2 or 3 minutes per patient. And I do that 5 or 6 times a day. I think you're saving me a half an hour of staff time. And the next doctor said to me, he said, you know, I think you're saving me 40 minutes of staff time. That's really, really valuable. And it wasn't until I got to the third doctor that he said to me, he said, Bruce, 10 to 20% of the time, we forget to bill those procedures completely. I think you're finding thousands of dollars in unbilled procedures there for me. Thank you very much. That's where we found out that it's not just time savings, it's better guaranteed results, Bob.
Yeah, and that we got to stress this again. I mean, in the trenches, you get busy. Somebody took an X-ray, it didn't go through. I used to personally have someone go back, check the day, and see what they've done. But sometimes even I used to forget to write it down or something. We took an X-ray. Now, as soon as the X-ray is entered into the imaging, it's posted on the ledger. It's one of the my favorite things, but we kind of overlook it now after 6-7 years of being on Ascend. It's not something that we think about, but it was huge when I first started with Ascend.
Yeah, Zach, if you could forward to the next slide, I think you're going to see, Bob, this is what Bob was talking about. This is important because we've lost a bit of this story because it's so, I don't want to call it old hat to us, but we've been doing this since the beginning of imaging and practice management coming together. So we don't really talk about it as much, but the embedded capabilities that give us this automation allow us to directly interface from the imaging back into the ledger and e-claims, and there's so much value to all this. Zach, you're from the practice management side. Where do you see the value there for directly interfacing into the ledger and the claims modules and things like that?
Yeah, this there are over and Dr. Bob, you said about 20% were being built. There in general, over 30% of images that are acquired in dental practices sometimes are never posted as procedures or billed to insurance. And that's a huge amount of lost production, lost revenue, especially considering the fact that diagnostic imaging is typically covered by insurance. So, so that's revenue down the drain for your practice if you don't bill for imaging work. And you know, as Bruce mentioned earlier, the imaging is used throughout Ascend. I mean, imaging procedures are posted and billed right as you take an image, and Ascend has logic in place that will prevent duplicates from happening. Like if you have bite wings attached to the appointment and you happen to be in imaging and you acquire bite wings, well, guess what? It's going to set that procedure complete that's on the appointment. And there are these duplicate checking things so that anything posted from imaging doesn't need to be posted twice by another person. E-claims. In our e-claims, while you're modifying an insurance, you look at an insurance claim, there's a quick one-click access to your images. You can post the appropriate image for the procedure or procedures that are on that claim. We also have another feature in Ascend that will prompt you and say, for this payer, this procedure requires this type of attachment. And so you also have that added kind of administrative workflow as well. In the ReCare system, when you acquire certain types of x-rays, for instance, bite wings, covered twice a year, every 6 months, pans, usually it's one pan every couple of years, things like that. Our ReCare abilities in Ascend will help prompt you, help you be able to schedule the next time that those bite wings or that pan or the full mouth series may be due. And so you don't want to miss out on that. As far as being able to see the list of exams that you've taken, there in our progress notes, your list in the chart, you'll be able to see an individual line that says, oh, this is my bite wings. And Dr. Bob, you mentioned being able to use ImagePeek. Do you see that? We looked at 4 bite wings today. Let me take a look at that. And you can click right from the progress notes and see the images that were taken when you did bite wings or when you did today's pan, something like that. Or the one you took, 4 months ago, 5 months ago. And then you also mentioned ImagePeek in the chart. You select a couple of images or select a couple of teeth, and then you use ImagePeek to say, okay, this shows you the most recent image or images from those teeth. And so that provides a workflow for you to easily access your images.
Yeah. Agreed, Zach. I think the next slide actually breaks it out even further. That recare component is very, very important. As you take those x-rays and you automatically update that they've been done and you don't have to do that manually, by definition, we're automating the workflow of the practice.
Right. Right. And this kind of does a side-by-side comparison of what we just talked about. In other systems, that is that additional work. I mean, Dr. Bob, you mentioned that you had to have someone, one of your staff members, dedicate a lot of time making sure that everything was posted properly. And other systems, that's required. And so it requires extra effort, extra work, extra team members spending time that they could be spending doing something else.
Absolutely, absolutely. And sometimes we take it for granted because I don't hear complaints from my staff that, well, I need to do this, I need to do that. But yeah, after using it for a while, you feel like this was natural and was supposed to be there, and it wasn't there for other software that I had used.
Zach, I think that if you forward to the next slide, this really tells the story of Dentrix Ascend, is that we're running the entire practice. And if you advance it one more time, Zach, it's going to point out some arrows here. So we're running an entire practice at Dentrix Ascend, handling multiple different tasks. And it's amazing to us how many of those tasks could acquire or could require images to be associated with them. And we're finding that you can't just bridge from practice management and imaging because you wouldn't be able to get those images easily over to insurance claims or over to recare or over to billing. So having the embedded imaging and practice management together allows them to work together and help Ascend run the entire practice with all of the responsibilities. Zach, maybe you'll touch on this wheel that we put together that shows just how many things Dentrix Ascend is having to deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah, you bet. This is essentially the main aspects of the patient's journey, right? The patient fills out a form before they start the work. Obviously there's scheduling, there's prescriptions that are written. But yeah, these 6 that are highlighted here are aspects that are of our workflow that our imaging, our automated portion of our imaging, really helps address. Not only are you acquiring images, but you're helping to automate so many other aspects of this patient journey. And that really saves not only the clinical, it not only addresses the clinical aspects of a patient's journey, but you also are able to address a lot of the administrative aspects of imaging, which I think really helps.
Great. Bob, you were kind enough to invite us here to speak about the product, and we can't go away without getting a quick plug for our new 3D module. Is it okay if we go ahead and give a little preview? This has only been out now for about a month or a month and a half, and I'd like to show a little video that explains our cone beam software, and then maybe talk a little bit about it and explain how it works. So Zach, if you could.
Thank you.
Dentrix Ascend 3D CBCT imaging provides high-quality, cloud-based images that can be viewed anytime and anywhere to enhance the standard of care given and expand your practice services. The 3D CBCT imaging procedure has been designed to bring 3D imaging capabilities into the existing workflows of Dentrix Ascend imaging. When you are ready to acquire a 3D image, click 3D Volume from either the Favorites or Standard tab under Imaging Procedures. Then select the 3D image acquisition type. Dentrix Ascend offers you 5 acquisition types that offer different field of view options. Next, select the software device that you will use to acquire the 3D image. Dentrix Ascend Imaging supports several bidirectional software device bridges that automatically open your manufacturer's software device to acquire and render the image. When you are ready to acquire the 3D CBCT image, click Proceed with Acquisition. During a 3D CBCT scan, the 3D cone beam machine rotates around the patient's head. In less than a minute, about 150 to 200 images are captured from a variety of angles that are compiled into a single 3D image. After the image renders, the 3D image automatically imports from your 3D imaging device to Dentrix Ascend Imaging. Once the image loads, Dentrix Ascend includes viewing and navigation tools to help you diagnose, plan, and provide the highest standard of care for your patients. By default, the 3D CBCT image loads into the multi-planner reformatted orthogonal view mode, which is the most common view for 3D CBCT imaging. The MPR view mode includes the axial view, the coronal view, and the sagittal view. Dentrix Ascend also includes a volume rendering view, which helps you see the full dental anatomy. The volume rendering mode allows you to view the front, left, and right anatomical views. To help you view the slices of the 3D image, Dentrix Ascend includes two navigation tools, the slider tool and the slice plane indicator lines. The slider tool allows you to view each image slice when you drag the slider tool up or down in each view. The slice plane indicator lines allow you to select and view the specific anatomy on the image slice when you need to evaluate a tooth or a region of interest. As you navigate one view, the slice plane indicator lines automatically move on the other views to display that same tooth or region of interest. To navigate the 3D image views, you can zoom in, pan across an image, zoom out, and expand the views when needed. When you want to add an annotation or measurement to the 3D image, Dentrix Ascend allows you to use the same tools that you normally use to add annotations or measurements. The only difference is that when you add an annotation or a measurement to a 3D image, the annotation or measurement is added to the specific 3D image slice that you are currently viewing. When you want to share an image with a specialist or another provider, you can click the Share button to send 3D images the same way as you do now. Diagnose, plan, and provide the highest standard of care for your patients with Dentrix Ascend 3D CBCT images.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Zach, for forwarding that one. Bob, I wanted to talk a little bit about the cone beam module, just to explain our strategy for three-dimensional imaging. And I hope that you would kind of help me to define a general practitioner's use of cone beam technology. Because in the past, Bob, we always looked at cone beam as how many implants you place a month decides whether you should be in the three-dimensional imaging space or not. And what we have found is that our customers, general practitioners, often don't use that category of how many implants I place. They often want three-dimensional imaging so that they could perform better dentistry, so they could be more competitive with the people around them, their peers and other dentists around them, so that they could perform better dentistry and be seen as a technical dentist using three-dimensional imaging. When it comes down to implant planning, airway analysis, and some of the fine, exciting tricks, we look at those as being very, very important to the oral surgeons and very, very important to the specialists, which is the reason that we take our three-dimensional imaging module as a viewing and diagnostic module. It doesn't have implant planning capabilities built in for two reasons. One is that we want to keep the software itself really light so that it can operate on any PC. You'll know that the cone beam software that runs implant planning usually needs pretty high resources for the graphics and pretty graphically intensive. We're running cloud-based software, and we don't want to have to force every one of the PCs in the cloud-based solution to beef up their resources in order to run implant planning that they might not even be using as a general practitioner. So what we do is we acquire these images. We store these images in the cloud. We view these images for diagnosing and for treatment planning. And then when we want to share them with a specialist, or when we want to use specialty software to place implants, we share those images and output them to planning software, as you saw there, or to a oral surgeon or a clinician that we would be consulting with. All of these different things make it easy to use for what our customers need to use it for in our minds. Does that make sense, Bob? And do you understand why
Yeah.
we kept it light like that so it would run on all machines?
Yes, absolutely. As a matter of fact, funny you should bring that up, because when I started testing this for you guys, I was like, oh, but I can't do implant planning. I can't measure this. Then I realized not everybody uses the same, are not comfortable with the same software. So if you incorporate that in here, let's not even talk about resources. You know, Dr. XYZ doesn't feel comfortable using this implant planning software. They want to use theirs. So I look at this as really, really valuable in, let's say you want to diagnose a tooth for patients having pain. You want to see if there's any infection at the tip of the root, you know. For diagnosis, it's great, but as you said, storage. It's in there and you can access it from anywhere without beefing up your computers to be able to handle it. In other words, your expensive acquisition computer for your cone beam doesn't have to, you don't have to take that home, you know.
Perfectly put, Dr. Bob. If you, one of our earlier slides talked about how the hardware has grown up. When cone beam scanners were still $140,000 and $160,000, it took a major investment, and our general practitioners that weren't placing implants didn't need to spend $140,000 to do three-dimensional imaging, even though there were large benefits to three-dimensional imaging. But now a cone beam scanner can be $60,000 or $80,000 or less, and it becomes similar to the price of a very high-end pan. You get to that point where now I can do three-dimensional imaging at a realistic cost, and it brings up the standard of care in the office. It helps you to see spiral root fractures and things that you would not normally see from two-dimensional imaging. So as the hardware grew up, our general practitioners adopt it more and more, but that doesn't mean they'd all become oral surgeons and start placing implants. What it means is they're doing better dentistry by seeing three-dimensional images, which give them more data than two-dimensional images, and they're using that to diagnose and treatment plan, right?
Yeah, and I'll just give you an everyday example. You know, it's a busy day. You need to plan an implant, and you acquire the CBCT. Now you go home on your fancy computer. You have your implant planning software, and at home at night you can literally transport this into that implant planning software and do what you need it to do. So it's very, very convenient, and it's a very good feature that you guys have added.
Thank you very much, Bob. I appreciate your help with it. You were instrumental in helping us to understand the leap from 2D to 3D and be able to create a product that was really a Dentrix Ascend product rather than just mimicking other people's 3D and bolting it in there in some way. This is definitely a Dentrix Ascend three-dimensional imaging module. Zach, have you heard good feedback from the team as far as the three-dimensional imaging?
Yeah, I have. I'm not on the front lines as much as the support team, but the support team has expressed that there's a lot of positive feedback from our customers. I have been in the office of a customer recently who uses it, and they're actually surprised how well it works in a browser. I think a lot of people, when they see something like this, think, is this another software product being hosted within this? It's just like, nope, this is our imaging product. Same imaging product that you use when capturing, intraoral X-rays, or when you have your intraoral camera. It's the same product, and that I think is surprising to people what we've been able to do with simply using a browser.
Yeah, that's that rote look and feel, keeps all the tools in the same place with the same look, and to be able to move those size images in the browser was truly magic. And it takes a lot of black magic to make that all happen properly, and loading in the background, and a lot of smarts that are going on there to work with three-dimensional images. But I've also heard the comment of, okay, so now you have three-dimensional imaging, how much of an upcharge is that going to be? And people are really pleasantly surprised when they find out that Dentrix Ascend imaging is a multimodality application that's not going to charge extra because you're looking at three-dimensional images now instead of two-dimensional images. It's all a part of the application. And people were very pleasantly surprised when a new version of Dentrix Ascend appears on the web and they launch it and suddenly there's three-dimensional capabilities. They were very, very pleasantly surprised with that.
Yeah, it's a great feature. If you guys don't mind, this is a really great slide. I want maybe Zach to point to the very top. I know we're all excited about CBCT, but I love the fact that everything is here. If you want to just point to the chart, progress note, this is the interface. This is the interface that we look at every day, and everything is here. If you click, I mean, this is a slide, you can't click on it, but if you would click on a chart, you go to the patient's chart. You have treatment planner. You have on the, it doesn't show on this slide, but you can look at the ledger, imaging. All of those tabs are up there for you to customize and to look at. It's a very a clean user interface, what I like to call it. Kind of looks like Facebook.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Dr. Bob. And sometimes Zach and I get deeply into our own world, and to us, it's not so impressive that all of these applications can go back and forth, just as Zach is doing right now. I mean, it's really,
Right.
really impressive to have all this happening.
Yeah, perio treatment. And then Zach, if you could show out those little hyperlinks underneath the underneath the name Zach, basically. They have charts, progress note, ledger. So from any patient, you can literally hyperlink into their different segment of the software. That's their ledger, basically. It's and then you have the upper layer that has the settings for the software, patients. Yeah, these are all the things that you can set up. So everything is within the same window.
And this is what you were referring to before,
Right.
with the ability to see. And actually, this is an additional capability that we didn't touch on really. These colored circles represent images, teeth that have images. And it's not just teeth that have images, it's the relative age of those images. The ones that are this darkest color are the images that are 0 to 6 months old. This patient doesn't have anything that's in between this. But if there are no images on a tooth, or the current images we have are over 2 years, that's essentially just about as good as not having any images. Then it will appear as this white color here. And the gradients in between represent the relative age of those images. But to your point, what you're talking about, and you want to see the most recent images for these, you use this image peak feature, and it loads those images for, you can tell this is for tooth number 7, and these are teeth. This is an image that has tooth number 4 or 5. I don't have a whole lot of a library of these. Otherwise, you could see navigation through here.
And then I want everybody to notice that it's within the same window. That the Dentrix Ascend is in the background still.
Yeah.
It's just a pop-up that popped up, and if you exit out of this window, you're back in the your software. Now, I use it a little bit differently. I don't have the x-rays on the side or the ledger on the bottom, so you can basically do it this way. So you can, and the patients are very impressed, Zach. I put this in front of the patient on a 40-inch TV, and they love it because they can say, "Oh, there is a red. I got to get turned into everything into blue." So it helps with patient education as well.
That's good.
Great. And then you may want to show them the schedule as well.
Yeah, in this this test database, I really don't actually have anything in my calendar
scheduled. Yeah.
So, yeah, and this is actually I'm logged into the central billing office, but in here you can actually switch between any of your offices.
So yeah,
so
this is another thing. Right. So these are, if you have multiple locations, you can from the drop down menu, you can switch to different offices and look at their database. Databases, I'm pretty sure, are not really mixed because you don't want to have different reports of one office get mixed up with the other, correct?
Correct. I mean, there are reports. If you have access rights to multiple offices, like this, for instance, is the day sheet. It's not going to show a whole lot because I didn't post anything today. But this is the day sheet. By default, I mean, obviously I'm logged into Dentacorp, but I have access rights to run the report for Dentacorp. I can select additional locations depending on whether or not I have access rights to them. And so in
I
this case, I happen to have access rights to all of them. So I could run it for all locations, or I could say, you know, I want to see everything in Alamo and my Scranton location and run the report for that. And that will produce a report that so it works really well for multi-site as well as just a single site office. And it's all
Great.
governed by access rights.
Yep. Very, very impressive.
And this, so in that video, you saw the 3D going through a 3D volume. And you notice these tools that I'm looking at for an intraoral photo, intraoral X-ray, same tools, same exact tools. And so you're able to do the same thing. You see the annotations here. And so that's one of the, going back to the whole, it's a familiar interface. You take an intraoral X-ray, you take an intraoral photo, you take a 3D cone beam volume, same interface.
Yeah.
We basically order those X-rays from the practice management. We order those cone beam volumes. So there's an entire audit trail, shall we say, on each image.
Right. Bruce, you mentioned CAD CAM, and I saw something in there as well. Is that also coming?
Well, CAD CAM capabilities are already in there, and they've been there for a while. If you have CAD CAM scans associated with a patient record, you can view them in Dentrix Ascend. You can flip them upside down, make sure you're not missing holes and things like that. The acquisition of CAD CAM components is still in its very early stage and still requires the acquisition software that's bought with the hardware. So that's where most of it is acquired. But for example, there are multiple scanners where you will acquire the scan from the scanning software, and as you linked properly to our software, it will then show up in the record like Zach is showing right now. And there's a scan from the patient's record, and we're going to view it in Dentrix Ascend without having to pop into a third-party application to be able to make sure we've got everything we need there. Do we have any holes missing there? Is it a good scan? Can we release the patient from the chair? Are they good to go? Is the scan associated with the patient record now? Is it in the cloud now? Can I look at it from home when I'm logged into a Dentrix Ascend? Can I look at it from another one of my practices when I log into Dentrix Ascend? The answer is yes. All the modalities get brought in and associated with the patient record and shared properly, Bob. That's how we handle CAD CAM today.
Is acquisition on the roadmap at all, or is that something that's becoming very complicated now?
No, it's becoming easier and easier. We had one slide that shows how hardware is maturing and is growing up. And CAD CAM and cone beam are very similar right now. They both need a reconstruction or an acquisition PC to reconstruct data into looking like a tooth rather than just a bunch of ones and zeros. But once that is reconstructed, the black magic is over, and now it's an STL or a PLY file, something that we can share back and forth to the lab. So if I'm going to use this as a lab case and I'm going to send this, I'm going to acquire it with my acquisition software. And as I did that, it's linked properly into the patient record. Now it's in the patient record. I view it from wherever I need to view it from, and I transmit it to the lab to go ahead and move forward. Remember, we acquire, we view, we store, we diagnose, and then we make it easy to transmit and share whatever direction they need these images. Oh,
Excellent.
thank you, Zach.
Thank you. Great. Do you guys have anything else to add?
We've got a lot to add, Dr. Bob, but we can't talk about it yet. We'll have to come back on another version of the Dr. Bob Show so that we can talk about the new features that are coming for Dentrix Ascend.
That's very, very exciting. And hopefully the members can benefit from this. I'd like this to be like a reference point when people are researching different software. They can look at this and say, hey, this is Dentrix Ascend and how it differentiates itself from other software.
I would hope that they would use this as the benchmark, as the standard of care, and they should go looking for other applications and say, do you do this? Do you do that? Because now we've learned what is the benefit of being embedded? What is the benefit of automation? And I don't know how we could go back from here and say, okay, I'm going to buy so-and-so practice management, and I'm going to just bridge it to so-and-so imaging and hope that it all works together and cross my fingers, and I'll cobble it together myself. It doesn't need to be that way anymore, Dr. Bob. I would hope people would look at the capabilities of Dentrix Ascend, and then when they go looking at other products, use that as the benchmark and compare. Do you have embedded imaging? Does it have 2D? Does it have 3D? Does it have automation so that it can talk back to the practice management and automate the workflow of my practice, make my day easier, make my staff's day easier, make my practice more productive?
Yes, absolutely. And I want to actually mention one more thing, and Zach can probably attest to that. Is one of the reasons I'm a big fan of Dentrix Ascend is the fact that there is a lot of support from the mother company, Henry Schein. There's a lot of funding that comes to this and a lot of development. We're in constant development, and I know Bruce and his team are, and the same thing as Zach and on the practice management side. You guys are always trying to add more features for us. Am I correct?
Yes, correct. And you mentioning Henry Schein, it brings stability to stability to Dentrix Ascend, and Ascend is the product of the future, and there are a lot of expectations, a lot of new features, as you mentioned, coming into Ascend, clinical features, administrative features, financial features, scheduling features. But as you know, obviously today we're focusing on imaging, which is second to none, especially when it comes to cloud.
But Bob, you've made a good point here in that the mothership Henry Schein does provide a huge amount of benefit. As I didn't mention earlier, but I spent 20 years at Henry Schein as director of imaging, and seeing all the different hardware components that are being sold into the practices over 20 years is really what woke us up to the fact that rather than leveraging hardware, we should open up software so that hardware can all compete on a level playing field. And it's Henry Schein behind this that allows many of the hardware manufacturers to open up the kimono, shall we say, and give us the capabilities to speak to the hardware directly so that we can create better integrated solutions. And then they can take their hardware and go up against anybody else's hardware, and it becomes apples to apples instead of apples to oranges. Yes, your hardware is good, but it doesn't work in this way or in this way. Everybody works as best we can, and now it can all be compared on a level playing field. Henry Schein gives us that power and that strength that everybody wants to be a part of this solution. So yes, the mothership is very important.
Yes, I wrote it in my articles. There are certain things you need to know. Feel whatever you want to feel about Henry Schein. I don't want to get into that, but having funds behind a software is the number one factor in having a good software, and that's one of my favorite things about Dentrix Ascend as well. That I'm always getting new features. I'm looking 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm waiting for that email that comes and says, "Oh, new release." I want to see what's in there. It's very exciting.
Yeah, cloud-based products are challenging. In the early days with very few users, there's not much revenue. And if you don't have solid backing and a team that believes that this is a long haul, it's almost like putting up the telephone poles in order to run a phone call. You've got to do a lot of legwork to teach people about the aspects and the benefits of the cloud. But once they get there and they realize that the cloud is the answer, gives them access to everything they need wherever they need it, people are more than happy when they get to the cloud. And Henry Schein has provided the structure for us to go long, shall we say, and it's gone well.
Right. I wanted to add something that I didn't really touch on before, is that we're doing imaging the right way. I mean, Bruce and his team have, since our imaging product is used as a diagnostic tool, Bruce and his team are always well aware of the FDA guidelines, that make that allow us to say this is a diagnostic tool. Not everybody does that.
Correct.
There are a lot of imaging products out there that just don't bother with pursuing FDA certification. And our imaging product has passed and will continue to pass FDA regulations that say this is an approved imaging diagnostic tool. Just wanted to touch on that.
No, I appreciate that you did. I don't usually talk about that component, but the truth is that there are other companies that put out clinical diagnostic imaging without sending it through the FDA. And it makes people wonder how they could use such a product to diagnose and treatment plan from an X-ray that wasn't brought in by FDA cleared diagnostic software. So, that's always a precursor to shopping for anything in the USA. I always found that, we've been working with Henry Schein for 20 years. We've always had to be above boards and legal and FDA compliant with our medical devices. but we watch as other companies aren't quite as compliant, and we always find that challenging that we don't see that clinicians notice that right away. You realize you're purchasing something and you're going to be diagnosing and treatment planning for your patients from something that is not FDA 510K approved by the government. And it's always kind of a bit of a questioning statement. So I think that is very important, and Zach brings that up very well. We're very, very solid in our quality management systems, our FDA regulatory capabilities, and that's what helps us to continue to progress.
Yeah, I actually talk about this in my group, and they all know that I always tell them the first question you ask about imaging is this FDA certified? And we have a discussion about that as well. So I'm glad you brought it up. Okay, anything else that you guys have wanted to add here?
We did a good job on the imaging, Zach. Is there anything else you need from the practice management side, or will we wait for our next visit with Dr. Bob to tell him about new and exciting stuff?
I think let's leave a teaser out there, and let's wait for the next session where hopefully we'll be able to take the covers off some stuff.
Great. Zach, if you don't mind making me host again. So.
Thank you for having us, Dr. Bob.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you very much, guys, for being here. And I know my members who want to demo Dentrix Ascend, they usually message me, and I'll send their name to Todd for a special team of demo people for our group and give them a little bit of a special treatment. But I thank you very much for being here, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys again in the future.
Thank you, Bob. It's great to see you.
Thank you.